You are all set.
All right. Hey, everyone. Again, because I was just talking, but switching topics. Today, we're going to be talking about measuring the effectiveness of an AI discussion platform. So we had started a pilot with Packback back in 2019, and we've been learning more about it ever since. And so today we have several presenters to talk a bit more about Packback. So if you're unfamiliar with Packback, you'll learn a little bit more about what Packback is, and you will learn a little bit about the research we've been doing, and then hear from John Locke from Plattsburgh and Andrea Wade from Monroe about their experiences. So that is our plan. And I think you can advance the slide if you'd like, Kim. Yeah, perfect. So this is all we have. This is everybody we have with us today. You can go one more. And yep, I think I covered that. We'll also talk a little bit about licensing information. So you can, if you're not currently using Packback and you're interested in it, learn how you could go about doing that. But I'm going to turn it over to Kim Scalzo so she can tell us a little bit about why we decided to go forward with Packback and explore this new sort of tool.
Thanks, Kristyn. So as Kristyn mentioned, we began working with Packback as part of the Degrees at Scale initiative for SUNY Online. And the idea was, I think, really twofold. Number one, we were really interested in any ways that we could think about getting to scale at both the course and program level. And also, where could we leverage, innovative tools and the use of artificial intelligence that could help us do things that maybe we hadn't done before. So Carrie Hatch actually saw, I think, a presentation or an update from Packback, or I think he met Casey at a conference, and it sounded interesting. So we had a demo, and we're really intrigued by both the focus of the tool around improving student learning and student skills in the discussion forums, and the potential that the approach that the tool had to support scale at the course level. And, in particular, as we talked about getting to scale with some of the campuses that were involved in the pilot, one of the things that we heard consistently, I'd say pretty consistently, from faculty and or campuses was the concern about, the use of discussion forums and the impact of faculty on, if we were looking at increasing enrollments at the course level or course size, then how could the level of interactivity and engagement be maintained? How could we support that in the discussion forum? So in the way that the tool is, that this tool functions as part of the discussion forum, that piece of it was interesting, certainly, but also for the, ability to really help students, deepen their critical thinking, curiosity, and writing skills. So I think it was at the time really unique opportunity for us. And so we decided to pull it in and pilot with some of the faculty and the campuses. And I think what you're going to hear about in today's session is kind of what we did and how that went.
Thank you, Kim. Turn it over to the other Kim.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Blanchet. I am a senior consultant at Packback. I'm happy to join you today to do a quick overview and demo. I am going to do a really high-level demo, but happy to touch base to go into the deeper intricacies of the tool as well, but didn't want to take all the time and get the presentation in the hands of your SUNY colleagues. So what is Packback? As Kim mentioned, we are an AI-supported online discussion platform. I like to think of Packback in two different pathways. One being like a digital TA in assisting faculty in addressing certain academic behaviors that they might see in the discussion board in order to bring students to those higher levels of blooms, the curiosity, the higher level thinking and writing, but also as an embedded academic support tool, almost like an online tutor for students, prompting them instantaneously on how to improve their engagement as they are developing their contribution to the discussion. We are an inquiry-driven discussion. Ooh, let me make sure I'm clicking on the right thing. And I'd like to say, I just want to touch on this real quick because I'm going to reference these 3 pillars when we get into the platform. And the idea of these 3 pillars is that this is kind of what the platform of Packback was designed on. We talk a lot about mastery of outcomes as faculty and in looking at assessment, but it's that magic of teaching, the art of teaching, that brings in purpose and autonomy. And Packback's designed to help faculty with that in an asynchronous or just an online platform. And so what we're trying to do, and I feel like we see this tweet arise every beginning of the term, is prevent something like this, right? Where we have the finite question and what we're getting is that I agree phenomenon. And so avoiding that I agree phenomenon to bring students to bring their own unique thinking to that classroom. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into the platform. This is in essence what the platform looks like. I am using a standalone version, but this can integrate into your LMS through an LTI integration. Also, I do have presenter mode on, so you aren't able to see the names of the students or their avatars for privacy purposes. But what you see here, and the major departure that Packback maybe takes to a traditional discussion is that these are all student generated questions. And so instead of a traditional, maybe faculty ask the question and then students respond to the faculty and then respond to their classmates' responses to the faculty question, what we do is align with faculty on parameters for discussion for the week, and then provide students with feedback on how to ask a question, support their question, and we use that same AI support in their responses to their classmates. So I'm going to go ahead and take on the role of a student by asking a question. You know, Kristyn's heard me say this a million times, but this is the worst part of a demo, is typing live in front of everybody. So for today's purposes, I am going to copy and paste a student example. And I say that while I'm showing you the front end of how the AI works. On the back end, our system is also looking for internal and external plagiarism, as well as class logistics information, close-ended questions, maybe vulgar and profane language. And the student receives coaching on modifying those behaviors as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask my question. Please keep your eyes on the right-hand side of the screen. This is where your AI is going to be providing students with the instant feedback. So what is déjà vu? And again, I'm going to paste a student example. And you can see a few different things happened. The students received a curiosity score. The curiosity score is a measurement of academic effort. This is providing students with feedback on academic behaviors. It is not reviewing students' work for content-related information. What it's designed to do is, by addressing those academic behaviors, it allows faculty to reallocate their time maybe spent on those academic behaviors to dive deeper into the curriculum in order to bring students to those higher levels of blooms. And so the areas that the curiosity score is providing feedback on is curiosity. So is the student asking an open-ended or a closed-ended question? And from the very beginning, you'll see the little red triangle. I'm actually getting a flag because I've asked a closed-ended question. So as a student, that prompts me to go back and rework my question. I'm gonna go, how does déjà vu impact your everyday decisions? So the system's then gonna review my work and update in real time. It's also encouraging me to add more detail in my add a description section. This add a description section is designed for students to bring in why they thought this question was important, make connections to their readings, outside experiences, that relevancy to the question and the course, and allowing students to elaborate in that area. Also included is credibility, encouraging students to include a source to support their position or support their question, letting their classmates know the resources they use to develop their work. And then communication, especially in the longer maybe responses in the added description section, encouraging students to break things up into paragraphs. Students are also able to include images, bring in videos to support their question in the added description section as well. So having that multimedia impact on the conversation. Also included, but not part of the curiosity score, is conventions. And that is similar to other apps that we might see that provide assistance in spelling and grammar. What I like about this is it's just encouraging that idea of revision. So to go back and review my work and be reflective, providing students with confidence in their writing as they are creating a work that is going to be reviewed by their classmates. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go back into the community. And what I do want to show you is what maybe a student's thread would look like. And so I'm going to jump into this student's thread. And so that ownership, that autonomy I mentioned under intrinsic motivation, it's the idea of students, having ownership over the question, but also having the autonomy on how they enter the conversation. So they can start by answering a classmate's question. They can start by asking a question. And because the parameters provide students with support on what questions they want to ask, there's not that repetition. So they're not answering a question and reviewing somebody else's answer before they're answering that question prior. And then in students' responses to their classmates, they receive the same instant feedback in the development of their work. And that also allows, them to have that writing assistance. What I also like is in adding a response to a student's response, students are also provided with feedback on how to either provide a counterpoint or a supporting point to a classmate's response. So diving into those deeper levels of academic discourse, and also provided with some feedback on what that actually looks like before they start their example for the class. Important at these times to be able to support our differing opinions. And then faculty, as they dive deeper into the curriculum of the class, have the ability to participate just as normal as the students do in responding, but they also have the ability to provide feedback in the form of public praise or private coaching. That public praise being located in the same thread so that all students receive the same information, but that coaching providing students with the same information to make them rethink and maybe go back and rework their contribution to the class, located in the same thread, but only viewable to the student who's supposed to be receiving that coaching. So I'm going to stop there. I can get in a few different little details, but I'm going to stop with that and go into, let me see if I can get us back to the presentation. And then just wanted to share, some of the other ways that faculty are supported in using Packback. And that includes receiving an email on what we like to consider posts that are hot, they're trending with a lot of responses or more responses from the classmates or have higher levels of curiosity skills. And then they are able to choose which posts they would like to feature. And then those featured posts are provided to their classmates in the form of an email, as well as are put onto a feature thread. And so just highlighting high levels of work and bringing good examples to the forefront of the class. And so I'm going to stop there and pass it over to Kristyn, and looking forward to our questions and our conversations. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kim. And like I said in the chat, if anyone has questions about how the platform works, please feel free to put that in the chat while we go through the next part. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the research that we were involved in throughout this pilot. I have a lot of slides, but I'm going to go through them pretty quickly because we definitely want a lot of time for John and Andrea to tell you about their experiences. So this first piece is just a summary of our contributions to this larger national study that Packback conducted. And this was during really our initial year of the pilot, fall 19 and fall 20. So this is not just SUNY data. This includes other campuses as well, even some other systems that are part of this research. But what the study found was that Packback did improve student engagement in terms of students writing more posts and getting more responses from their peers. It improved discussion rigor and quality, again, in terms of the numbers of sources that are cited, or the likeliness for students to cite sources. Improving course grade outcomes, so students being more likely to receive A's and fewer D's and F's compared to students in the control group, and then positive student and faculty satisfaction gathered from surveys. So for this study, a lot of that was done by having a control, which means either a faculty member was teaching one section with Packback and another section of the same course without Packback, or they were looking at historical data, so they're matching up a previous section of that same course taught by faculty. That was a little bit difficult for us in SUNY to accomplish throughout our pilot, but Packback was able to get that data from some of the other institutions, and this is what they found. Go ahead, Kim. So then turning more specifically to SUNY, we have had, and this says 2016 because there are a couple campuses, I think Binghamton being one of them, that have been using Packback since prior to the SUNY online pilot. So overall in SUNY, we've got over 8,000 students that have used Packback. In this current term, or past term, I guess now, we had over 3,400 students using Packback with 65 unique faculty users and across 11 institutions. Again, that's more than just the pilot for SUNY Online Degrees at Scale. That's just SUNY generally speaking. And so we're going to talk a bit about the student and faculty engagement metrics that the platform actually collects. The first being the curiosity score. So Kim talked about this earlier. Students actually get a score, and this is where the AI really comes in terms of a metric that faculty members can use to see how students are doing with their involvement in their posts. So this chart is each week of the semester. This is looking at fall 2020. Of course, it's too soon to have all of this ready to go for the spring. So we're looking at last semester, the fall semester, and you can see that students' curiosity scores, the average was about a 77, and that's about 8 points higher than the national average, which we like to see. And you can see how the score sort of fluctuates a little bit over the semester. Beginning of the semester, students are learning how to use the platform. Then there's, midterms, students might be not as involved in the platform, and then end of the semester it drops off a little bit, but it really does peak there toward the end of the semester when students are getting a hang of using the tool. In another presentation, we looked at how this compared to one of the first semesters we were using Packback, and you can really see that these scores are higher as students are getting, and faculty are getting more used to utilizing the tool. In terms of the posts being moderated, so what we mean by moderated is that the tool is actually giving students that feedback, and the students are having to go in and revise what they're saying. You can see that there is a trend that over, again, that bottom axis is the weeks of the course. As the course goes on, students don't need as much of the moderation because they're developing habits, and they're able to use the tool in a way that it's not constantly telling them that they need to ask an open-ended question and watch for their grammar and do all these things. They're more able to do that on their own over the course of the semester. And then coaching actions. So this is where professors are going in and having to take actions in the platform and coaching students. And you can see again over the course of the semester that decreases, which we would expect. So in the beginning of the semester, the faculty members are more active in the platform and having to help students, encouraging the behaviors that they're looking for in the platform, and then that drops off over time. You can go to the next one, Kim. All right. So here we looked at, for SUNY, we looked at a group of Packback course sections in comparison with those faculty members' discussion boards in the LMS in previous semesters. So again, we didn't have that one-to-one comparison, but we did identify the data that we could to do this comparison. And what we saw is that the students using Packback were more likely to use a source than the students using the LMS discussion boards. So that's this one. And then they were also more likely actually in the LMS to have longer posts. Now this is interesting because it's a little bit contradictory to the national study, but we think this is really just because of the common practice of requiring a certain word count in the LMS versus being a little bit more holistic and focused on other types of engagement and quality versus just word count. And then what we would love to do is look at, students' engagement in Packback and then compare that with their grades. One of the challenges, though, is that we're not identifying individual students in the platform and then matching it up with their grades. We're looking at it in aggregate in the course section. So we weren't able to find relationships with the curiosity scores and average grades, but we did find a relationship between the number of replies to a post and the average class grade. And again, this is in aggregate in a course section. So if within that course section, students are replying to each other more frequently than others, they actually showed that there's a higher class grade average there too. So more engagement was leading to higher class grades, which I think we would expect to see. But again, it was nice to see that the data supported that even in aggregate by grouping with course sections rather than looking at individuals. And then we have some survey results. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. We do the survey every semester with students. There's also a faculty survey. We don't have any of that in this presentation today, but that's something that we are continually seeking is feedback from both the faculty and the students. But here we have some highlights from the student survey, some of the quantitative questions. Of course, there's open-ended questions as well. We didn't have time to include everything, but we'll go ahead, Kim, and we'll run through some of these. So the response choices here, it's a Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So you can see number 4 is the agree category. These students are indicating that they feel more confident about formulating and asking open-ended questions. So that was the stem there. And you can see that students are definitely agreeing or more likely to agree with that statement. I feel that I am learning course material more effectively and retaining the concepts better. That's of course something we would like to see as well. There are more students in this one that are in that neutral category, but again, majority of students are in that agree and strongly agree side of the scale. I feel that Packback has challenged my critical thinking and writing skills. This one's pretty important when we think about the learning outcomes or learning objectives we have for students in all of our programs, right, at SUNY and institutional learning outcomes. Critical thinking and writing are huge. So if we can help to encourage that through this platform, we think that's really awesome. And again, you can see the 4s and the 5s are definitely the majority of the answer choices here. I have discovered concepts, ideas, topics that I otherwise might not have learned in class. So this one is interesting because sometimes what Packback allows for is that students will actually ask questions that align with things that they're experiencing in their everyday life that faculty members would not necessarily have thought to ask or include. We did a previous presentation with another faculty member who's not on here today, but she said she learned a lot from her students because they were asking questions about topics. They were related to the course content, but the specific content was not something that she would have thought of, right? Because it was something that was related to sort of the culture that the students are existing in. And those questions are more interesting to their peers as well because they're relevant to maybe things that they're interested in outside of the classroom. So it provides an opportunity for students to really apply the topics to other concepts and ideas that they might not have read about, in their textbook or in their assigned readings. So we are going to move along to the portion of the presentation where we're going to invite John Locke and Andrea Wade to talk about their experiences, their overall experiences using the tool. They're going to tell you a little bit about their use as a faculty member and also as an administrator, because they're both administrators for their campuses. And then a little bit about what they've experienced for their students in terms of learning outcomes and assessment, and how they've tried to generate momentum for Packback use on their own campuses. And I believe we're going to start with John. Yeah, awesome. So John, if you're there, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. Well, just to give you a little background, I think I attended the very first conversation about Packback's availability to SUNY Online faculty. And because we have a SUNY online program here at Plattsburgh, I wanted to be sure I understood the platform and how it works and all the ins and outs. So since I also teach a course each semester, I asked to be included and have a Packback iteration on my Moodle class. That was in 2019. I think I just finished my fourth semester using Packback, and yeah, I've got some incredible. I've had some incredible epiphanies because of it. First of all, the way it was initially, I don't want to say sold, but the accentuated the accentuated feature of Packback was that it was going to be a time saver for faculty who might end up teaching 100 or 200 students in a class. And I would agree that that is definitely an advantage to it. But there is so much more to it. And I think that anybody who's used it would definitely agree with me on that. Um, it's way more simple than just saving faculty time. Um, the first thing, and maybe others have done this before, in while they're teaching, but it came as quite a new concept to me, and that is asking the students to ask the question. Um, for most of the time, I've taught forums or I've used forums in teaching for a long time, both online and in classes, and it finding questions, or for me to ask a question, was always, I mean, it was a requirement. I did it, but the students kind of went through the motions of answering that question. But what Packback has taught me to do is, instead of asking a question, putting out a prompt each week to my students that generally says, okay, we studied X, Y, and Z this week. What questions for your colleagues does that has that brought to your mind? And I ask them specifically. It's not, you don't just ask a question, you have to pose it. You have to write a thesis, brief as it may be, but you have to write a thesis that situates the question you're going to ask. And oh my God, that changed everything in my forums. Suddenly, in the way it works, I can pin my prompt at the top of the page so that during that week, everybody's, staying on topic, or at least, on topic according to the class. But it just, what you'll get are these students who are asking questions that, as I think it was Kristyn that just mentioned, students will associate their perspective to the content so much more, and to see where they take things is really inspiring. It's quite unique. Um, and Kim mentioned the curiosity scores, and this is an artificial intelligence insertion, certainly, but it does have it has a gamification effect on the students. So as they're writing, they're getting coaching on the side, and they realize, oh wait, if I also refer to this other article, they know they're going to get more curiosity points for that. And I actually, every semester, I have 2 or 3 students that become rivals. And you might have noticed there's actually a leaderboard, and you can click and see who's ahead. And I've actually had students email me and say, how can I get more curiosity points? And it's important. We put a limit on how many points, or not a limit, but a cap, a benchmark that they should at least get 70 points for whatever they post. And my students, the last 2 semesters, have far exceeded that, and and try to do better every time. It's really amazing. But the quality of responses, I teach a course where there's a vernacular that I expect them to use. And so I constantly remind them of that. And they, I look for those words as I'm reading through their posts, and seeing if they're aligning the vernacular with the concepts behind them. And it's so much more refreshing for me to be focusing on that rather than trying to tell them, you wrote 2 paragraphs and it's one complete run-on sentence. It makes it harder for me to read the stuff and for their colleagues. Well, the IA is already taking care of that. So we're focused on the content of the course rather than the mechanics of communicating. I don't want to go on for too long, but I do want to mention a couple things here. I have on my iPad right next to me here, I've got Bloom's taxonomy up because for the life of me, I've been working with it for 25 years and I still can't remember it off the top of my head. But I was used to seeing students maybe getting up to understanding, possibly applying in a standard discussion forum. But in order for them to ask a question, they need to remember what they read, or at least remember where to find it in the reading that they've done. They need to understand what they've read. They need to be able to apply it to different situations, analyze how effective it is. They need to be able to evaluate the question they're going to ask based on all of the above. And then they need to create the question. So really, they're going from step 1 up to step 6 in one activity. And the one last thing, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions when that time comes. But the one last thing I want to mention is that I don't assign a lot of research papers in my class. But the fact is that I usually have about 13 discussion forums over the course of a semester. And by the end of that discussion forum, students are on average producing about the same amount of content as a 20 to 30 page research paper with between 8 to 12 works cited. And the thing is, they don't even know it. It's not painful for them. They're not stressing about it. They're just having discussions. And whether it's online, I do this both in face-to-face classes and online. And if it's face-to-face, it kind of keeps the conversation going after they leave class and goes out over the weekend usually. But I find that my students are so much more engaged in the content and making associations to that content that I never would have even dreamed of. So with that, I will yield the rest of my time if there is any left.
Thank you, John. We'll move over to Andrea.
Hi, good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about my experience with Packback. And I'm coming really from a couple of different lenses, coming from the lens of the provost, where one of my responsibilities is really looking at allocation of resources and trying to look across a whole program and look for tools that are going to help a lot of different classes. But in order to really look at this particular product, I happened to, this would have been spring of 2020, a semester we all remember fondly or not. And I was teaching pathogenic microbiology online for SUNY Broome. And I had the opportunity to use this tool as a faculty member in that course. And it was the semester of an entire lifetime to be teaching pathogenic microbiology, just in terms of what was happening in the world. But I have to tell you, when I first heard kind of the description of what it was, I was sitting with the faculty members virtually, or maybe in real life at that time, talking about what it was. And the faculty members were, I think, it's not unusual, skeptical, using artificial intelligence really to replace the faculty member role. And I could see this was not something that they were necessarily immediately drawn to. And so I really wanted to try it for myself and find out, what is it really? And it does not replace the faculty member at all. There's, so that one I can dispel immediately, but it is a tool really to train, and I'm going to call on myself, first of all, in discussion boards and discussion as a learning strategy, to teach the faculty member to ask better questions. You know, we know the content, but we don't always know how to ask the best questions. So there's training involved about how to ask the best questions. But then what the tool does, as you've heard from other folks, is to help both the faculty member and the students to really look at the quality of those responses. It really helps support critical thinking. It helps support in really a formative way how those discussion postings happen. And what you see is what I always hoped for in an online course or in an online discussion board, to have the students really richly interacting with each other, responding not at a very surface level, again, as John was saying, but really responding with a depth of understanding of the material, drawing in facts from outside sources, supporting those facts, and then responding as students with questions themselves to prompt their classmates to respond again, so that they start to build kind of this idealized community of knowledge and really elevate the whole community of learners through using the tool. The tool does, again, not replace the professor or the faculty member in the course. The faculty member is there interacting. It just helps that faculty member by doing that additional coaching. And it's in a format that students recognize and are comfortable with. So many apps are out there where they're liked and followed and ring the bell. And so they're very much accustomed to getting that kind of feedback from their peers, and accustomed to giving and receiving that feedback. So it's really a very comfortable experience for them. What I saw, because I started the semester without it and finished the semester with it, I did see, kind of as the data show, that I saw an elevation in the level of postings that students were making, and in not only the quality, but the quantity and the depth. I saw it as a way, specifically, when you look at equity, I had students where English was not their first language, and I saw them benefiting tremendously from this as a tool, kind of coaching them along. Certainly the strong students remained strong, but I also saw the students who weren't quite sure how to give a quality response, learning through the experience and through the coaching provided by the tool, how to improve the quality. And over time, you get the chance to kind of feature different students. And that was a very positive experience for them. You could see that they benefited from that. And again, as the instructor, I could go in and reinforce that. You know, I see that you quoted a high quality source. I see that the feedback you were given last week, I see you've responded to, and the students responded really very, very positively to the experience. So in terms of moving forward, there were several faculty members who took this on in the pilot period and are very much taken with it, and trying to figure out how to use it. As John said, yes, we used it in SUNY Online and in online courses, but it could effectively be used in face-to-face based courses to help enrich an online discussion process as well. So I think that kind of summarizes the experience that we've had thus far. It's been very positive. It's helped us, again, leverage and increase the quality. We did do an initial kind of look at analytics around student success, and the numbers are still too early to look at that, but definitely got positive feedback from faculty about the quality of the responses from the students, and the students' comfort with this as a tool that supported them rather than another thing they had to do. So I think I'll turn it back to our moderator so that you can ask questions, and hopefully we can answer them.
Thanks so much, Andrea. So we do have plenty of time and we would love to hear questions, but I think we do have one more slide to talk about contracting options if anyone is interested. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim Scalzo first and then Kim from Packback to give you this information. And then really we would like to open it up to conversation and discussion.
Great, thanks, Kristen. So, for the pilot, we really focused the use of the tool on the SUNY Online Degrees at Scale pilot campuses. So that was really just actually 11 campuses who could use it. And we did say you could use it for your, faculty teaching in the Degrees at Scale programs or anybody else on the campus teaching online or face-to-face. As we move into the U-wide contract, and starting, actually starting the summer, it's available more broadly. But starting with this contract, we wanted to make sure that it was accessible and available. So you do have the options to say, we want to do this for our whole institution based on, the model that's in the contract, or you could do it individually, course by course with individual faculty. And there's an option for doing that. So there are advantages, certainly, as more institutions adopt. We have a tiered pricing model. So we're trying to get the word out widely about the availability. And if folks are interested, you can reach out to Kim, who is our primary contact, who, I don't know if you said this when you introduced yourself, Kim, but Kim is a former SUNY person. And so she knows many of the issues of, students and faculty in SUNY. And so she's really a great liaison for us with the Packback team. And yeah, so I think, just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that it's out there. And I want to also just give a shout out to our pilot campuses, to folks like John and Andrea, who agreed to try out this new thing. Part of what we wanted from them was to know, is what they're saying about this tool really true? Are we going to see benefits and advantages? Because, vendors say a lot of things, but, we needed to have our own experience in SUNY with our own faculty and students. And I want to also thank Kristyn and the Packback team for, making sure that as we went into this, we were structuring a research project that would allow us to really see the impact. So, I feel really great about the experience that we had and the participation, and what we're seeing is what I think we would all describe as kind of the early outcomes and impact, and hope that with more usage, we'll be able to validate some of those findings and get some additional perspectives. So I didn't say that initially, but I think that's an important part of what we're doing in the whole Degrees at Scale initiative. And we couldn't do it without our partners. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim. So just wanted to touch base with you all about the UI contract. Easier to set up individual institutional meetings, and all of that communication can go through me. Because we do have those 3 different pathways, right? We have, if you are a SUNY Online institution, I have a team that specifically works with SUNY Online, does all of the onboarding, recruiting, and faculty development for the use of the tool. We have the student pay model, which does benefit from the waterfall model of pricing. And so I have another team that works with student pay because that's a different type of support. And then we do have the institutional enterprise model, which mimics SUNY Online. So my team is the same because we do have a lot of crossover. And when I say 2 different teams, it's all one big SUNY team. I just work with different faculty developers, recruiters, and onboard specialists, depending on the needs of your institution. And so feel free to reach out to me for any questions, but also I know I did a very high level view of the platform as well. And so we can do a deeper, more intricate demo and ask more specific questions at a later time. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. All right, so I think we have about 15 minutes left. So are there any questions from anyone out there? It could be about the platform. It could be questions for John and Andrea. Anyone thinking about using this on your campus, but you're hesitant for some reason, we could absolutely talk about that.
Or anybody else who's used it that wants to share their experiences.
Yeah. I'm looking through the attendee list to see if there's anyone. Go ahead, Michelle.
So can you hear me? Is my computer actually working?
Yeah.
I'll try to turn on my camera. So it's a question, John Locke, something you said struck me about the student perception of the work that they were doing, right? Relative to how much work they were doing. They did the quantity and quality tantamount to, and then you like set a number, like 3,000 pages of research writing or whatever you said, I don't even know. I'm curious. So when I do discussions online, I ask students to cite their sources, right, as they're sort of going along. So they're not just opining, so that I can track some understanding of and integration of course concepts and course material and all of that. And I always feel like I'm stymieing, is that a word? I don't know. I'm stopping the natural flow of a conversation because I'm asking them to do these weird little mini essays. So how do you feel Packback, or do you feel Packback helps with that? Is that ever an issue for you? Like, can you say something about the flow, I guess, and quality, as well as the quality of discussion?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I think it does sort of put the brakes on a little bit on discussions. And that's not always a bad thing, especially for the introverts in the room who, like to sit back and contemplate before they respond. And, I could say that about any forum setting, as long as it's not synchronous. But in this particular case, I think that I tell them up front that these are informed discussions. They're more like an organized debate than just an off the cuff Facebook conversation. And so I expect them to be a little formal about it. I teach propaganda, which is very contingent upon current events, and it's so easy to go down the rabbit hole and talk politics instead of propaganda theory. And so using, being a little more strict with how we approach it benefits the students as well. And we have to keep each other disciplined. There's often times where, they'll drag me right down that rabbit hole along with them if I happen to be, opinionated on a given topic. But yeah, I think that and I'm opinionated on pretty much every topic. But no, the difference between, asking them to cite, a resource in a Moodle on forum and Packback is that there's an actual field where they put it in, so it helps remind them that, oh yeah, I should probably do that. They don't have to, they can submit without it. But then if they do it, they'll notice, oh wow, I just got 10 more curiosity points by doing that. And again, that gamification, I don't know how well it works with adult students, because I think that by the time, we become adult students, our level of competition might have, petered out a little bit. But I can tell you with my traditional students, they're, they might as well have hockey pucks and masks on when they're playing. Well, when they're working, I guess.
Thanks. That's cool.
Can Kim or Andrea or John talk about, you've talked about using this in different disciplines, right? And I know that's sometimes a question, right, about, you know, the applicability to various disciplines. Can anybody want to comment on that?
I'd almost ask if you'd back up to the slide where I was supposed to present. That's a response from a student in the course I was teaching. So you can see the level of response that I'm getting from an ordinary student. And you can see the source cited at the bottom. And that was not my prompt, really. That's the student responding to an idea about again, diseases that are transmitted through different mechanisms, public health, and just asking the question. And what a great question. I would not have asked this question.
Right.
This came from a student. So the student is saying, what if we all were vegans? Would that actually reduce the infection burden on humanity? And what a great question. But do you see, as they go through and cite facts, the student finishes with a question for his peers. Do you think if we were to give up consumption of meat that we'd also slow or control infectious disease? What a cool question. I didn't think of asking that question. The students did. And then they respond to it. So that's what I'm saying. It's a really richer discussion. I learned, again, as others said, I learned from the students during all of this. It really, it does have an organic quality to it, but it helps support the students to give those high quality responses that allows a higher level of discussion to kind of naturally and organically take place. I hope that answers the question. Does it, Michelle?
It does. There's an acronym I'm desperately trying to think of. It's not prompting and building. I just put that in as filler, but it's add something something. There's like an ad, I can find it somewhere in my own online course that encourages students to hear what their peers are saying, reflect on it, and then add to it, right? In that last bit about asking the question, Andrea, is the adding, right? Okay, so what if we then did this, or what about this? In a way that maybe a faculty member would not devise on our own. Thank you.
Yeah, why don't you hit the reverse button one more time and check out my students' response there too, because a different topic, but just as profound in my opinion. And you can see here, this is where, like I say, we can easily go down a rabbit hole where we're talking about capitalism versus socialism. But he gets through his rant in the first paragraph, and then by the second, he's bringing it back to the topic at hand, propaganda.
Those are great examples. Also, I wanted to kind of jump in on Kim's question, because I think here we see two very different disciplines, great examples of questions. So as Kim also mentioned, I was at Onondaga Community College and part of the same national study as SUNY Online when we were over there. And we did a lot of our adoptions in like the humanities areas. Psychology actually was an example I used today from OCC. And I remember speaking with Dr. Evans qualitatively after our pilot. And she just mentioned that there's questions that students came up with that she didn't know that was a specific area of let's say the content of that week that students would be interested in, because she was always maybe leaned towards another area of interest or a subtopic within a topic she found interesting. And so what she found was she became intrinsically or increasingly interested in what students found engaging and what they were curious about. And so it brought her more excitement in getting into the discussion as well. So that was a great takeaway. Working with other disciplines, we are seeing an expansion of use in engineering, the sciences. Interestingly, math has grown over the last few terms, in that it's more of in using these theories or equations, where would you apply these type of mathematical experiences in the real world? What type of profession? So a different approach to math, adding a different layer to the study of math as well. Regardless of any discipline, it is a pedagogical practice. It's an alignment of pedagogical practice with the faculty, where they're trying to bring in engagement with their classmates, and where they're trying to bring their class and their conversations in the class. And so that, to me, is the funnest part of the conversation with faculty and onboarding, right? Is learning from all of us, sharing experiences of other disciplines, and being this true community of practice with how we're implementing a technology to drive students to higher levels of thinking. It's interesting.
All right, we have just a couple minutes left. Anyone has any other questions? Our email addresses are up here as well. Again, if you want a more in-depth tour of Packback, you can email Kimberly, and she'll be happy to walk you through that. If you have questions about Andrea and John's experiences, their emails are there as well. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, Andrea and John, as well, for sharing your experiences. We really appreciate that. I've been saying a bunch of times in my presentations today that none of this is interesting if we don't hear from the campuses, because none of this is worth doing if the campuses aren't doing it. So we really do appreciate you being here and sharing for us. So thank you all.